Do you have a favorite?
Not meant to. But mostly the unloved ones. The unvisited ones. The cases that get dusty and ignored. All the broken and shunned creatures. Someone's got to care for them. Who shall it be if not us?
Yes.
Welcome to Rune Soup, a weekly podcast about magic, culture, and the very best new and old ideas for living in this world. Coming to you from 43 degrees south on a small farm in deepest Tasmania. My name is Gordon, and I shall be your host. This week, we welcome back to the show one of the most popular returning guests, Jenx. As you might expect, he's back in your ears, talking us through Thai Occultism to coincide with his recently released tour de force, the Thai Occult. Let's get to it. Jenx, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Gordon. It's good to be back, of course.
Yes, and this time not so much from the land of smiles, but the land of frowns. How are things being home?
I'm actually sat in the garden, and it's 7 a.m. because the reception around here is rubbish. It's very nice, actually. It's always good to come back to England, you know. But it does seem to get more miserable by the year.
Yeah. I guess if you spend all that time somewhere that is, you know, typically known for sunnier dispositions, it might be, those first couple of days back might be a bit, whoa.
Well, it's interesting because you can see the effect of living in town and drifting away. You know, because one of the things that I adore about living there is the fact that people's default position, the first position, is kindness. And, you know, that reminds me of my youth as well. But it's so refreshing, and you can see people making the choice to be kind. And I find that extremely humbling, really.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, it's. I don't think, from my experience amongst the English, I don't think that's their first reaction, but maybe second or third. I think the first one is suspicious, like, why, what do you want? And then you get past that, and then generally they're, you know, unless you're participating in a football riot, they're going to be nice.
Well, it depends as well where you live. You know, I come from a small northern town, so, you know, it's I've had great kindness from the people in that town.
Oh, good. Well,
yeah. So it all depends, like many things.
Yeah, absolutely. We are here to talk about the Doorstop, the latest book. I think it needed its own plane to get to Tasmania.
It turned out a little bigger than I thought it was going to do, but, you know, I had something in my head with this book. It's like an introduction, really. It's the best introduction you'll get to the art.
Oh, absolutely.
That I could do. You know, and it just ended up being 552 pages. And
it's interesting because I've got copies of the previous ones, and your photography is improved. The photos in this are like nothing else.
It's well, that's actually the next book as well. I'm planning on part of the thing about opening this system to the world. Is, you know, we've now hopefully produced a book that's going down very well indeed and giving great understanding to the art. But that's kind of limited, isn't it? It's limited to the occult world. And my next project is hopefully going to be a photographic book, which will be in bookshops. I'll just have to keep the dodgy stuff out of it, though. You know.
Yeah, this one has some better dodgy stuff. That's for sure. Yes, I don't typically get sexually intimidated by talismans, but I think if I was shopping in there, I'm like, do you have talismans with less ambitious sexual positions depicted on them?
It can get a little raw, but at its heart, it is a very natural system, you know. And, you know, since I wrote that book, it's the new one. You know, new information is coming all the time, and the natural aspect of the magic is actually coming out because of the current legal restrictions towards getting the correct sources of human materials. And it's really, again, it's just so beautiful to me, the way they use nature, the supernatural entities of nature. And it will continue going that way. I can see the drift that way as the human materials become less easy to source.
See, that is fascinating, and I would say that's one of the tonal shifts in the book is that kind of thing. But we'll get to it in a sec. But this is an occult book, and it had, in a way, something of an uneasy birth, which we couldn't really talk about last time because you were in the throes of it. But I do notice you mention some of those challenges in the introduction. And as you say, there are some, and this is the thing about, living systems or living, I guess, economies of magic. They do change, and one of the ones that you're noticing is a move away from, or not a replacement so much, but a discovery of non-human components to it. But I mean, maybe tell us a little bit of why the book is what it's about and how it came out in this form.
Certainly.
If you can.
It could be a long conversation. To be honest with you, I've been led into this book. This book has been waiting to be done in many ways, and despite various problems that got in the way, the passage through constructing this book was actually extremely natural, and it was almost like being led the way. I was led by the hand by whatever wants to be more open to the world. And looking back on it, it becomes more apparent. And actually, now that I'm quite deep within it, it's becoming even more natural, and you can see the influences it has on life in an easier fashion. And also, like anything, as you continue to learn, my attitude towards the magic also develops. And it's developed even since writing this book, which only came out on September the 3rd. Because now I'm actually allowing myself to be not open, but to be understanding of other magical systems and understanding of people from other magical systems as well. And that opens kind of a new door to the understanding of this system. I don't think that process is ever going to change. It's so deep. It never stops. And really the human material stuff, a lot of that comes from a time when people, when they needed severe protection because it was a dangerous environment, there was many wars, they needed, strong advantages in life because they might be poverty-stricken, etc., etc. But as Thailand develops as a nation itself economically, you can see that changing, but still holding the magic. And as Ajahn Suh said to me recently, he said, well, all the rough stuff, the heavy stuff, just goes into the cupboard because it's not sought after at times like this. But if there are ever times of strife, that cupboard would be open again. And they still have the knowledge how to do it, how to construct things, how to make things from very dangerous materials, really, predominantly human materials. And, the laws are changing. It's becoming more kind of strict as far as access to corpses go, etc., etc. And gone are the days when they could just cut the head off a corpse and leave a watermelon in its place. And that's a true story.
Yeah.
That's a true story as well.
Some similar things are reflected in the grimoires. I've had previous guests sort of point out that if you were in regional Europe, say in the 16 or 1700s, there are cats everywhere. And so, you look at some of this magic and it does come from a time when life was cheaper. And so if it's getting less cheap, then it necessarily has to shift. The big difference, of course, is, as they say, if the Ajahns are just sort of shelving, as you call it, the heavy stuff, in case it needs to be used again, one, that's just good policy. And two, I guess culturally or structurally, that information or those skills can in fact be retained. You just sort of don't need them. I have a couple of friends who are in different initiatory traditions, and if they, get given stuff to do with killing people and they're not psychopath, here's some really good curse magic, and you go, well, I'm not a psychopath and I live in a developed country, so you have all these skills what are you using it for?
Exactly. I mean, there's one Ajahn in particular, Ajahn Singh. He has vast knowledge of ancient styles of curses. Vast. He's learned 28 from 28 different masters. And, he doesn't actually do it for payment anymore, really. He'll generally just do it for himself if somebody pisses him off. So he's not a man to piss off, of course. But, and it's, do they need to kill people anymore? Really? It's a heavy shoulder to bear. And, there are other ways of dealing with these things. Gentler magic comes in, or gentler things come in that actually fulfill the same position without killing somebody. There's ways to. It's like a kind of a curse that just drags their energy down, so it kind of helps make a more even balance in any relationship. And that nowadays is enough. And in the same respect, like Gongkapan, one of the attributes that you can get, which is serious protection. Nowadays they consider that Sene, attraction, and metta, which is loving kindness, as attributes, work better than using Gongkapan because, it's difficult to hurt somebody if they're incredibly likable. Or you're attracted to them. So it's just a development of a system, and they're using the system to fit with modern demands. And I don't think that will change, but they will still retain the ability to make a peneng, a human skull piece, with the ability to kill people. They still make, in rare occasions, they still make a lukor, which is one of the child spirits, which definitely has the ability to kill people. I know of one Ajahn recently who did take on the job of killing somebody, and it was fulfilled, and they don't receive payment until it is. But that's a very extreme circumstance, and then the Ajahns got to live with their actions and work out how to make a balance from that action.
How does that work? There are different cultures around the world that have, cursing traditions, which is most of them, have different clauses or get out of jail cards for the sorcerers perpetrating it, right? And the most common one is they are just the implement, and the karma, for want of a better word, accrues to the client who put the hit out. Is that similar in cultures that officially have a notion of something like karma?
Well, I've asked. It's very difficult to get a direct answer on that, to be honest with you. Things that are undertaken by the Ajahn, like the type of curse I was talking about recently to even out a relationship and reduce somebody's energy, which is called a com ritual. It can bounce back to the negative stuff, can actually bounce back to the person who brought it, but generally they consider that it is the burden of the Ajahn.
Interesting.
And they have to work out a way of reducing that burden. And normally that's done through good practices like tambun, which is making merit through giving to charity and helping people. And they just try to keep a balance in the bank and not go too overdrawn, if you know what I mean.
So curses are presumably expensive then, because if a curse is expensive, because an Ajahn would then have to, as you say, sort of balance out the ledger somewhat, and that would come with a cost as well. I'm just thinking about it like an airline that's like offsetting the carbon on your flight, right?
Exactly. Like Ajahn Sura actually refuses to do some of the curses he knows now. Ajahn Singh refuses to do them. But, if somebody came along and with enough money and wanted somebody severely hurt, I'm sure there's a couple of Ajahns out there who would undertake that process. Partly also, you've got to consider that, they want to test their magic. And I know that sounds like an extreme thing to say.
No,
these
not to this audience. Who doesn't?
Studious. These are extremely studious people with great power, really, some of them. And, it all depends on the circumstance, really. I wouldn't personally get involved in any of it because it could bounce to me for organising it. Yeah, so... it's a very delicate system. And, like everything in life, we've got to kind of balance ourselves off. We've got to keep on some sort of path of good action, because then that, it gives us a benefit in life. It all depends. All depends. It's very difficult. It's a difficult subject as well, because often they flatly refuse in public. But then, under certain circumstances, it might be undertaken. I think all of them nowadays would choose to, or would suggest that it is better just to reduce somebody's power over them. Yeah. But in circumstances where, there's been a murder in the family and they know who did it, yeah, they might undertake it. But you would have to have a serious reason.
Mm. That's generally the case if you take a hit out on someone anyway, as you say. And it does come from a time when you don't have things like presumably functioning law courts and police forces and so on. In times when life was cheaper, and if people come after your family, you have to go after them. Makes complete sense. And also, I'm just I was kind of interested in it because the morality of killing hasn't been settled, and we're 2,500 years after Socrates and Plato, and they brought it up and didn't reach especially satisfying conclusion. So it's not like there is a definitive answer we may find somewhere.
I don't think there is. I think it depends on the situation. I think it depends on the way the person would approach somebody to do it. It'd be like trying to find a hitman. Also, a lot of people are going to meet somebody who are just going to take your money off you and bugger off. It's emotive, but basically, being of an older generation, if somebody touched my partner, I'd have in a serious enough manner, I would have no compunction except to use every single ounce of my power or my energy to repel that.
Absolutely.
It's very, very difficult indeed, but they retain the ability. And there's even a photograph in the book of one of the candle magic to kill. Which I have altered extensively because that's not something you want really going out into the world. And I had to show the alterations to the Ajahn before I got permission to use it.
That makes sense to me. Well, see, that's kind of what I meant, I think, by the Uneasy Birth, because this book is more coherent in the sense that it's more balanced. I was thinking as I was putting the questions together before our discussion, there were some challenges associated with the previous book, and it's almost like it was supposed to come out this way. Like this is a remarkable book, and it has a coherence and balance, and obviously the pictures are better, but I think this was the book that it was supposed to be, and it's just sort of fascinating from a creative perspective to watch how things like that happen.
Well, it's also a path, isn't it? It's if I wrote this book in a year's time, it would be different again. Yeah. But really, I wanted it to. I've questioned myself about the first book and the second book and how we've managed to improve everything and everything else. But that's also the path of somebody else getting into this system. Sure. We kind of need those steps, and the balance brought about through this book was brought about because of considering who I was going to interview. So, there's Ajahn Te, who incredible magician, who's actually only giving advice on the way we use kata, the way we use mantra, and the way we should approach it, and other advice about the very basics of the art. Because we need that. We can't get that. I can't also suggest that from my own personal experience, because basically I've not gone as far as these guys. And the thing that's really impressed me with interviewing all the Ajahns is the fact that they want to tell people, because it's all got terribly skewed in certain quarters, and they're trying to bring it back into a correct understanding. Because the problem is when it goes to a new country, the beliefs of that country and the way the way of the culture of that country naturally influences what they are receiving, and it becomes a bit twisted. And also, marketing of these goods has also twisted it as well, because people want to overplay certain aspects of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping I have got the balance correct on this. And it's
I think you do. Yeah,
it's better.
It is, and it. I have a very good example of what you're just talking about there, and we come to the part of the show where Gordon attempts to pronounce Thai words.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's sort of it opens. I think it opens in absolutely the right place with, I'm going to say, cow tea, sort of household spirits.
Oh, the Tao T. The CH and the J are interchangeable in Thai.
Okay.
So it's like Jiao Ti. Yeah.
Jiao Ti. Okay. Because one of the
Which
things,
are the land spirits.
Yes, and because I want to talk about spirit houses and people's relationship to them, because what you articulate in the book is very different, and the premium members are going through a course we're just finishing up now, depending on when this episode comes out, on magical geography. So that part was quite useful. I use it as an example, because when the notion of something like having spirit houses hits the West, it hits our devotionalist culture. And that's not the attitude you typically find. You have the relationship is more uneasy rather than reverential. So there's almost a pragmatism in it that is in Thailand. Yeah. Whereas when that kind of, so I want you to talk us through that, because I found that maybe wary is better than uneasy. But the relationship this isn't a universal good, and what I must do is just kind of, now I have a spirit house and the spirits in it are good. And I love I think the thinking is far more nuanced and mature in your depiction of kind of Thai spirit house praxis.
Well, it's, spirit, actually, we're about to build a house. Yeah, me and my partner in Thailand. And the process of doing that involves blessing of the land. Yeah, so the first post that goes in gets blessed. And then I'm going to use a dancer because he was a monk for 15 or 18 years, and he's my go-to Ajahn. Really, I'm a Luxit of Ajahn now. And he will decide on the position of the spirit house and persuade the resident land spirits to live there with the kind of a deal that we take care of them and make offerings and look after them in the hope that they don't bother the living. Yeah. Now, thinking about what you said, so that involves daily practice of giving food, burning incense. You can also ask favors of the land spirits, the Jiao Ti. And in many ways, actually, the land spirits can also work like a praxis, whereby, if you can still your mind enough, which is one of the functions of saying kata and the meditational practices of this art, the Jiao Ti can also act to warn you of danger coming or good things coming. And if we go through the process and practice diligently, that is the case. Yeah, because I've had experiences of it. But I mean, they should not be taken lightly as well. I was going to do a book at one stage about spirit houses, and I started to photograph them, and I got a slap and told not to. Yeah, but personally, I think that practice. One of the aspects of this book which particularly interests me is the way, because this is unbroken for thousands of years, the Thai system. It's the way it's going to be accepted by other cultures, and the way smart people who are into magic will adapt that information to work within their culture and their belief system.
Well, that's exactly why we use it, because if people are listening along, notice the distinct difference from just expecting a kind of room service approach to land spirits coming at it from Western culture, where it's like, oh, I bought them a spirit house. Hey, we're friends now. I'm going to give you stuff and everything will be fine. Notice that the nuance and intelligence that comes from thousands of years of experience of the bargain, which is we will build you a house so you don't fuck our shit up. And now we live here as well, and you live here, and so let's work out how we get along together, rather than, hooray, I talk to my land spirits and we're besties. And that was and the book more or less opens with the spirit house stuff, and I think and that's an excellent example of learning from or learning with another culture rather than appropriating, because the Thais have been doing spirit houses for longer than the Australians, or at least the non-Aboriginal. Well, they didn't have spirit houses, so longer than the Australians. So I will look at the praxis that has been honed over millennia, and as you say, find the parts, not even the parts of it, but find where that resonates with my practices and learn from them. And it's so good. It's such a better way of doing it.
And the thing you were just saying then, land spirits are not your buddy.
No.
Yeah, land spirits have to be praised. They are above us, or below us, but they hold more power than we do. So they have to be kind of coerced and supplemented and given the correct dedication. And in that manner, they will, and almost then kind of ignored, because you don't want to get close to these things, because otherwise they'll attach to the living. For instance, I was driving with my partner, and there's some terribly dangerous roads in Thailand, and we were driving up to a temple near to Chiang Mai, and there's a really bad bend, and it's just smothered in spirit houses, And my comment was, wow, look at this. This is wonderful. I always get very excited about these things. And Bond just said, well, it's better not to pay them any attention. Otherwise, they could pull you off the road. Yeah, so you have to kind of, in the Thai beliefs, they actually praise them and take care of them so they're not uppity, so they're not part of our existence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can make bargains with them as well. Say, if you fancy a shot of liquor, which most spirits do like a shot of liquor, would you take care of the house while we are away, please? And when we come back, I'll give you an extra bananas and rice and burn more incense and give more dedication to them. So these are being worked with. They are not your mate.
Yeah.
It's that position of the Thais. And this also then drifts on to, the spirit houses that you get around certain trees, like Metakian, which has her own style of amulet and their own style of shrine. These things can be asked favors of, but it is done in a way whereby we request and bribe rather than becoming too close to them. It's fascinating. Somebody should do. I mean, it's not going to be me, but somebody should do a book on the nature of spirit houses, because the decisions where to place them, and also what type of house to place there, whether it's concrete, whether it's wood, the size of it, all the animals and the figures that you need to put on it to keep the spirit happy. This is all dictated by people who are, extremely good magicians or monks. Monks also fulfill that service. And it's incredibly complex. If somebody wants to do it, I will help them by getting the interviews if they come to Chiang Mai, because I'd be very interested in finding out more about that myself, to be honest.
Yes, but did you get a slap from the spirits, or did you get a slap from people when you started your book? Because I kind of, if you think about... I got a slap from the spirit for photographing. Yeah. So anyone who wants to do the Spirit House book, just be ready to be slapped.
Well,
which you kind of understand.
What I should have done is I should have requested permission. I was being kind of excitable at that time, and I didn't wait to be given permission by these things. And it did, I stopped immediately and apologized.
Yeah. Well, you're taking photos of people's houses, and as you say, the relationship is wisely arm's length, in the same way they should be with other untamed denizens of the more than human world. Like you don't befriend an alligator. If an alligator lives in your river, you're aware of it and come to some sort of uneasy arrangement, one might assume. But I really, well, because I think that sort of information is very important for people in the West, because if we have little experience with spirits, at least as far as we're aware, and jump in really excitedly, and that bit's good, there are a whole bunch of unexamined assumptions about the nature of them and the nature of your relationship that we bring with us from a cosmology that tends to have Jesus as your best friend or whatever. And so that's not the right attitude, and people will do it in a grimoire sense where you're dealing with, you know, explicitly malefic entities. And the besties approach isn't correct, and so that kind of stuff is just really, really useful. It's really useful to see uninterrupted animist cultures and how they approach stuff that we are trying to sort of feel. It's almost like physiotherapy after an accident. We're trying to find our way back into that mode. So it's great stuff.
I mean, the interesting thing for me is that personally, I actually think making the mistakes is okay. Yeah, because we're allowed to make mistakes. We're human. Yeah. So making that mistake as far as photographing the shrine, I learned very quickly from it, and I adjusted. And it's the same way as maybe buying an amulet that's too strong for you. You know, there's a period of growth going to come, and you're going to have to really dedicate yourself to it. And in this way, we grow, you know. So while we should be careful, and if it all goes wrong, you know, the Thais do make candle magic for helping to control uppity land spirits. You know, they've got all sorts of remedies for these things, and they will do it by hand and post it off to you, and with instructions of what time to burn it, etc., etc. So all these things, you know, we all make mistakes, and we all kind of have wriggles within the system, but it's forgivable, and the Ajahns will then kind of nudge it back into the right place. That's not in the book either, is it?
Well, the candle stuff is. We're definitely going to get into that, but it's so we're looking. The premium members and I are kind of looking at a lot of academic research to do with animism and anthropology and so on. And there's this sort of macro notion of relationality and also just generally getting along together. And that's sort of what you were saying, which is the rules aren't these sort of neoplatonically descended from a supernal realm to permanently machine run the physical world. Spirits and humans and everything else are just kind of knocking along together, and it's this relational getting alongness. And we're not used to that, where we just had 300 years of being told that the universe runs a specific way. And it's just really, and what I liked in that sort of early chapter part as well is you sort of talk about the inherent pragmatism that hits all levels of Thai society. And I just did some work on forest bathing in South Korea, and it's basically the same there. People will admit to being either atheist, Christian, or Buddhist, but even the atheists are animists. Like if it doesn't cost you anything to leave an offering before you go on a business trip, so why wouldn't you do it just in case? And I just think that's so wise. There is this kind of pragmatism and cultural way of understanding probabilities, at the very least, that you find in these systems.
And you know, also again with a visitor recently, he asked Bon, the partner, so what occult system do you follow? Do you practice the Thai Occult? He said, and Bon, who's, you know, he's a very smart lad, our Bon, he just turned around and he said, but my culture is magical. The language is based around magic. The names are based around magic. He said, I've been brought up in magic. So in many ways, many of the Thai people are magic. And that is also one of the eventual aims of this system. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
so
sure.
we can look at
just ruminating on the fact that maybe you shouldn't have called it occult then, because it means hidden. Because
it kind of is. I mean, you go into a shop and say, "Have you got a kumantong made out of child bone?" and you'll understand why it is hidden.
Right.
Yeah? But there is another level whereby people live like magic. They understand the give and take of life. They understand that things need praising and certain practices need supplementing, and you know, it's just everything in the language is related to magic. And it's been quite a surprise to me, because me and Bon speak English at home and have done for 12 years now. So his English is superb. But then when we were doing the discussion about the woods that are used for statues, His descriptions from very simple Thai messages. It's like, well, yeah, he's saying this wood, but this wood is named because of this. It's because it sounds like this. This wood gives this particular attribute, and the depth of it within the culture itself is astonishing. So, in many ways, many Thai people don't actually need to follow any form of magic, but they still have a magical ability.
Do you think that's what we're looking for? It sounds like that's what we, in the broader Western sense, we're looking for a fully inspirited magical world, to the point where there isn't this head into the temple room, cast a circle, do your thing. Do you think that's what we're that's the hole that we're trying to fill?
Well, I don't know, because I'm already immersed in it, but it's been very good for me, whereby every action can be considered as a magical action. And really, to be honest, since finishing this book, I now think the primary aim of all the practice is to become magic yourself. Yeah. So if that is the case, Thai people have had thousands of years of becoming magic. Another comment from the people from Alex who just visited, he said, it's weird, when I get hold of an amulet, he said it lights up. He said, but when I look at it and you're not holding it, there doesn't seem to be an enormous amount of power there. Now, I said, well, which surprised me, because I never consider I've got any magic. I'm just trying to find happiness in life, And I said, well, shooting from the hip, it's like, well, isn't that meant to be the case with all forms of magic? Aren't we meant to eventually be the magical tool itself?
How does it differ? So just because we're talking about Thailand in particular, and you kind of do talk about, so Thai magic differs from some of its near neighbors like Burma in some ways, and is the same as others. So I don't think we've spoken about that before, but if we're talking about this general becoming magic and how the Thai people definitely have something of a head start, is that the same elsewhere? I mean, is there something unique about it in Thailand? What are some of the similarities and differences you find there?
In Thailand, it has benefited from never really being colonized or conquered. Yeah, so it's never really been interrupted. The north of Thailand was owned by Burma, so a lot of the practices in the Lanna region, northern Thailand, do have a Burmese influence, but they've also kept the original animist roots, which basically come from the Thai Yai. And I think the main thing here is that with Buddhism, it never conquers a land. It never conquers a people's thoughts. And it allows for the previous practices to coexist. And I think that is what has led to the current state of Thailand, the Thai occult to this point. Yeah,
I think about that often, Jenx, because let's just say you were in Thailand when the first Buddhist monk missionary types showed up, right? You already have a cosmology that allows for you to understand that these are holy men and holy women, so that they actually don't break your cosmology. They're adding to it in a way that
it's layers.
Yeah, but they're not. If you consider the difference to, say, Christian missionaries in the Pacific in the late 19th, early 20th century, they showed up and said everything you're doing is wrong, and there is this one Protestant God, and this is his book. Now, so it breaks. So you have to have a binary of like, oh, I guess everything we've been doing for thousands of years has been wrong. I guess we're Christians now. Whereas if they'd sort of, funnily enough, and this is, I think, how you can get a hybridized Christianity and indigenous system, is if they just showed up as people with spirit knowledge, they would have fit into the system. And that's kind of what, if you think about how, well, I do anyway, if I think about how Buddhist monks first showed up in a culture or cultures, they're certainly not bringing the sword, and so there's these holy people who actually have, literal magical powers, and so they don't break the system. They fit into it and add to it, and that, I think, is a fascinating difference. And tragic in many respects when you think about the rest of the world.
Well, it is. It's a shame, really, but that's also one of the aims of colonialism, to conquer. Yeah, Buddhism has never conquered. It's always just been supplemented. And really, I've thought about this quite a bit myself. It's supplemented through improving people's lives, through improving the way they act, through improving their demeanour, their understanding of life itself. And in there's two forms of magic in Thailand. Pragmatic, which does not use human materials, which is pure Buddhist magic. And then Sayasat, which is the science of the darker stuff. Yeah. And, all the Ajahns, pretty much 99.8% of the Ajahns are devout Buddhists. Most of them have been monks, especially in northern Thailand, for, over a decade. But they see it as learning the study of Buddhism for them is really the act of learning the focus necessary to produce magic. And also Buddha is the refuge. He is the one that protects. Yeah? So you can see very easily why it's been accepted very readily by the magical community over the last few thousand years, because the Thais have then turned Buddhism into magic as well.
Mm. Well, that's the other thing.
Supplemented their own magical system.
Yeah, Buddhism comes because I have Dr. Kripal on the show occasionally, and in the last episode we were talking about his experience in India. He's a comparative religion scholar, and he says, I think India is special. And we were sort of talking about the fact that India, so sort of Hinduism and Buddhism, have, out of everywhere in the world, spent over 2,500 years developing the most important consciousness technology anyone ever has, and it's free. Yeah. Like that's what you can. They give that to people wherever they go, and so it is actually a unique and potent form of magic and way of making magic work better. This book's been really interesting in navigating that dance. I mean, so to what extent? Here's one for you in an animist Buddhist culture. So to what extent are, say, Thai attitudes to death influenced by animism versus Buddhism, because you have a kind of reincarnational model and an ancestral model in there, and obviously there's in the book the parts of the body component, which is Buddhist, but the use isn't. So it's this really fascinating blend. But like, how does the afterlife work in a Buddhist / ancestral culture?
To be honest, I'm not Buddhist.
Fair enough.
I've chosen a very unusual path through this. And, like somebody said to me once, I praise one particular monk called Loang Poppy, and he said, well, why is he not being reincarnated? I said, well, I don't know. I'll have to ask him. It's some people choose not to be reincarnated. They can go a very long way away, but still remain in contact with the living world. All Thais believe in reincarnation. But how that has been affected by the animist practice, I really couldn't say. Who knows what was there originally? And there's been waves of influence upon it. The Indian system has influenced the Thai system greatly through the Lusi, the Rusi coming into Thailand. But even they ended up doing things that were not part of their system. Because the Thais, they readily accepted applying tattoos. Mm-hmm. It seems. Yeah. So at the same time as all these influences coming in, the strength of the magic in that region seems to have also influenced everything that comes in, even with the people who brought it. Yeah. So I couldn't really answer that question as a scholar. I think other people have to answer that question.
I find it so fascinating, and for me, I just had this placeholder idea that you kind of touched on it earlier. There's a kind of reincarnation is inevitable, but optional in the sense of choosing the when and not choosing, but you can kind of stretch the when and where of when you come back, and that seems kind of quite animist. That sort of idea that you might be part of the tribes. I don't know. Like, I find that fascinating. I find how those two, it's not that it's a clash, it's that neither of them, the Buddha wasn't particularly interested in this stuff. He was interested in fixing people, right? And you don't find...
And he also rejected magic.
Yeah, and so you don't find much description. Well, that's not necessarily true, I guess, when you get to places like Tibet, but you don't strictly find much description of it. And then in animist cosmologies, it's sort of open-ended or provisional. A lot of stuff can happen after you die, just like a lot of stuff can happen while you're alive. And I find those two things sitting together really, really interesting to think with.
Well, they also don't, from different conversations with friends, they also don't think that they think that it takes a long time to come back as a human.
Mm.
So one friend just, oh God, I hope I come back as a cockroach and get stoned, so I missed that particular level out. But that's certainly, I don't know whether that's part of Buddhism or not, but they also believe that they become part of the natural world.
Sure.
Yeah, so they can all come back as various animals, but I don't know whether that's part of Buddhism or not, because I've not studied that particular aspect.
What I found, what was most noticeable in this book is, and I know this is bordering on a problematic thing to say for people listening, but go with me on this. There are some structural similarities. There are some structural familiarities in the practice of magic. We touched on candles as an example that looks. This is where it gets problematic. For instance, there's the Dirty Place reputational spell with the pictures of the spell in essentially an outdoor toilet, right? And I almost want to say that as a beginning magician, as a teenager trying to experiment with different forms and curses, I would use things like stormwater drains and debased places for it. Yeah. And it was really, really fascinating to see some of the structural stuff and the use of candles that makes me think, and this is the problematic bit again, that there are some, dare I say, universal technologies to how practical magic or practical enchantment can be deployed around the entire world.
I believe that.
Yeah. You see why I had to navigate like that, though. But, yeah.
Different cultures, in my opinion, find very similar ways of magic, but the way they do it is influenced by the culture itself. Yeah, they will use things like that. But the Thais also do, like with that form of magic you were talking about, they might do the toilet system, which we're back to the calm spells, bringing somebody's energy down. But the same spell can also be done under a staircase, because then people walk on your head all the time. Yeah, The same spell can be done under a bridge, because people are walking over you all the time. Now, culturally, that's about the feet being the lowest part of the body and being dirty. Yeah, within Thai culture, you don't point your feet at people. You don't point your feet at the Buddha, especially. Yeah, but there are literally, I don't know, I couldn't count how many of that type of spell there are. It's a huge number, but it generally relates to anything that can pull somebody's energy down or influence them while they're doing an action. Now, surely that's just a human trait. We will all find a way to think about how we can bring somebody down a little bit to even out the relationship between them.
See, I don't know if it's a human trait. I think it's built into the universe. I think that the technology there is matching a human or a spirit or a soul or whatever to a state of debasement, and that debasement, as you say, is different because of the toilet is probably universal, but the feet thing is more a Thai issue than it is, say, a Spanish, right? So that's what was really fascinating about the all the dare I say practical enchantment sections in the book were how structurally familiar it is to people who are using Western quote unquote folk magic or what have you. I mean, they're playing it in another game because they have that kind of uninterrupted skill base. But I found that really, really, really enriching, and also next time I have a blackout, I've got a toilet, I got plenty of candles. If someone's upset me, let's do it.
Well, the thing about the candles, though, is that there's various different types. They have books and books of spells that are wrapped around the wick. So it is not just a candle. And also the amount of threads within the wick is important, and those threads can either come from being used in Buddhist ceremonies or by being used during a funeral, in which case it becomes a prayer material. It becomes a ghost material. There's literally thousands of those spells. I have one at home, Gordon. I'll send it to you so you can have a look if you would like.
Absolutely.
And it's a modern print. These things are still available. But then I've seen the library of Witcher books of Ajahn Suh, and there's shelves upon shelves upon shelves of them. And I said, "Oh, what's on this particular bookshelf?" He said, "Oh, that's all candle magic." I said, "And what about that one?" He said, "Oh, that's also candle magic." I said, "This is going to carry on." Yeah, that one's candle magic as well.
This is the thing I feel we intuitively land on, because that stuff about using material for the wick that's come from various Buddhist ceremonies. So you find the same thing in the witch trials, where people will, in Venice, you'll find examples of witch, or actually it was Rome, that would pay people to go in and take or cut off parts of the rope that rang the bells on a particular Sunday Eucharist situation, and they would be burned and used in black magic. And it's that same this is the sort of structural familiarities I look at it and go, and that's kind of why I find the books that you write so enriching, because I'm not going to go and study Thai magic, but what I am going to do is take another look at the things that we have tumbling through European magic history and sort of hold them up next to this and go, well, there's probably something that woman who was subsequently tried as a witch was probably a witch. That's the stuff that she's describing. We have, very similar things going on in Thailand.
The ideas, I've got one friend who's a necromancer in Germany and another friend who I talk to for advice, who is a high priest in Haitian Voodoo. And, sometimes when I come across a sticky subject, I talk to them. Yeah, sometimes when my German friend comes across a sticky subject, is how would the Thais handle this? It's because of the length of time that they have done this. This can even lead to new forms of magic within a system, new ways of doing something. People can take the ideas. And if people want to write to me, with questions about how would the Thai person do this, what's the concept behind that, what would they use? I'm open to any of that, and I'm pretty open-hearted as far as telling people go. And if they come up with a fantastic question, I'll even ask an Ajahn for them, because they want their system to be understood. They won't tell you the kata, they won't tell you the method of construction, but they will tell you the way. And some of the interviews in the book really astonished me as to how far they went with the description. Oh,
it was very, me too. This was, as you say, they want this information out. And that's been my experience with the last year and a half with different Australian Aboriginal groups as well. They want the information out.
Okay.
And I actually think there's a fundamental step change in the world, and I think it manifested in places like Standing Rock and so on, where the sort of the nation of the earth, right, in the sense of animist and so on, is coming for a piece of the 21st century, and as far as I'm concerned, they can have all of it.
Well, to be honest with you, why is it rising? Yeah, it's rising because things are a bit fucked.
Oh, quite. That's exactly what I think.
There's timing for all this. I think what the book can give also is some of the ideas about the woods that are used. I'm going to do a paper soon on the metals because it's missing in the book. I'm going to spend 6 months over that, doing that one as an appendix. There's things not in there that we can cover later and just either give away or charge a couple of dollars for the PDF, just as additions to this as we find out more, because this process hasn't. Really, we're just starting the process. I find new things every single week. Would you like me to tell you one that really blew my head recently?
Obviously, go for it.
How about this one? a well-known Ajahn had one of my friends went to see him, and he was talking about the near relative, and it ended up whereby Ajahn held his hand for a while and said, "Well, you've not said everything that you need to say." He said, "So if it comes close to death, if you want me to, I can hold her back for between 3 and 7 days." He can actually. He said he can actually stop her spirit passing for between 3 and 7 days.
That's cool.
And
that's amazing.
Bon had, I remember I had never heard this before. Bon had to translate it for me 5 times before I fully understood it. And then it was one of those jaw-dropping moments. And this is happening quite a lot as they feel confident enough that I have confidence in their abilities, which is 100%. And enough, and we have enough of a relationship whereby they'll openly just say things like that. But it took 5 translations before I'd actually believe it, and before Bond could put it into the correct language to make it totally understandable.
See, that's an exact match when we were out on APY lands in Central Australia in May with a couple of groups that work with the Ananu, and some in a tourist capacity, some live there, and they will tell different things and almost different things of different spiritual intensity to different people based on, and we interpret that as a trust thing, and it is partially that, but it's also you can now hear that without either dismissing it or going crazy. And that was
exactly, and also it's about you.
Yeah,
it's you.
And that it was really fascinating. So the guys who we were hanging out with would get different stories from the Aborigines, and I just from the people who are out there are getting and sometimes of the same songline, and it's not, they're not fucking with you. They're very serious about getting this information out, and it's a question of where the listener is in that process, and that's really interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was another example. Ajahn Sir, the Ajahn I'm closest to, really. There's about 4 or 5 Ajahns in the book that I'm very, very close to now, which is a complete joy. When he gives a tattoo, he also gives his Luksit tattoo to anybody who gives a tattoo with. Now, this Luksit tattoo is on the hand, and man, it's pain like you can't really quite believe. And then he will try and persuade you to keep the precepts, the 5 precepts, don't steal, don't be a twat, things like that. He said, but for you, this particular person in question, he gave them one specific one. He said, that's the one you need to keep. And I watched this person deflate. He said, that's the hardest possible one you could possibly give me because of my situation. To which I responded, well, why do you think he gave it to you? And he does it to different people every time he does it. He gives them the one, he specifies the one that they need to make the most effort for.
Well, when I come and visit, I'm definitely not getting one of them, because I don't want to. You Jordan, must never eat pizza again. I will cut my hand off.
The pain involved in that tattoo is a shock, but he's trying to shock you. I think that's the whole purpose of it, It's because, especially with men, I don't think we can grow without trauma.
Sure.
Which comes from my, martial arts studies and all the rest of it. We grow through trauma. We don't change gradually. Women have that ability. Well, but men often need that trauma to grow. So I think it's related to that. But he did say your dick hurts more, inside the groin hurts more, and the top and bottom of the feet hurt more than that. So they're also the ones that you should avoid whenever you visit. Good.
And speaking of, what's a minor wife, and how do I get one?
Well, we can post them, but they do wriggle a bit in the box.
Yeah, fair enough. Because I'm going to attempt another. I'm going to attempt another Thai word. Maha Sanaya? Maha Sanaya?
Okay. Maha means great. Yeah. Sane is attraction. Yeah, so it's great
yeah.
attraction.
Okay. Because I found that bit interesting, the minor wives and so on, but let's talk about this.
Okay.
Not exactly minor wives, that was just me being joking, but I found this bit I found this bit fascinating.
Well, it's kind of, Thai culture used to be polygamous, and wealthy men often take a minor wife, who's often known by the major wife, and the focus of both of their raids generally goes to the man. But it's just part of Thai society, especially for the wealthy.
Cool. But it's a sort of indication that the love spells and love amulets emerge in a I was going to say different culture, but in many respects not really. They're quite involved. Put it this way: there's a whole technology to the science of the magic of love going on there for sure.
Yeah, and also, but the Thais make it up to you. They will give you the tool, but then you have to grow to be able to use it correctly. So the element of the self using the tool is what actually helps just as much as the tool itself, in my considered opinion.
Is there the same squeamishness about love magic, directed love magic in Thailand, in the West? And in some respects it's good, right? Just for your long-term psychological health to have a broad spectrum love spell, which is to bring love into one's life rather than that man left me, I need some magic to make him fall back in love with me. But are they less squeamish about it?
You can do both.
Yeah.
You can do both. They're practical. One time I was at Ajahn, and he was giving two ladies a gold face blessing because they were both meeting men that night who they'd just met, and they wanted to attract them more. Yeah, because, Thai people, they love love. They're very romantic people. They know the value of it. They know the beauty of it and the beauty of the life that's spent with somebody else. So the extent of love magic that they go to is really quite phenomenal, even to the point where they use ghosts to bring back your husband, or they use ghosts to turn a friend into a lover, things like that. But really after that, they will provide the opportunity for you. But then the person needs to act correctly on that opportunity. So, there's still an act of growth involved with the recipient of the love magic.
So the structural similarities abound. You actually find in Egyptian and Greco-Egyptian magic that you will go to different entire graveyards or different graves, depending on your target. So certain ghosts are good for bringing a lover back. Certain ones are good for generally just finding love. And it's usually, and like the best ones, and this is actually, I thought of you when I was putting this information together, the best ones, in many cases, for certain love spells are women who have died while pregnant, because you get 2 for 1 on the ghosts. And also they feel aggrieved, and presumably rightly so, that they missed out on that entire part of their life. And so they're already kind of hot. They're already angry. And so it's really, really interesting that they're so structural. Yes, but they also want a family. They want love. They want that whole thing. And so it's the logic behind it appears to be universal.
Generally, when I talked to a dancer about this, we were in the graveyard one night doing some love magic. The photographs of which are in the book, and I'm going, which ghost did you use tonight? He said, I prefer a Pitai Hong. Pitai Hong, which is like a ghost that results, a type of ghost that results from people who died in accidents or violently. He said, and in this graveyard, there's half a dozen ghosts in there that I like to use because they're really nice people, and the merit they get will lift them up to their eventual rebirth so they're not stuck in a difficult part of the lower world. Yeah, now, going back to what we were saying before, amulet sometimes can suddenly empty of the ghost. Yeah, and that is generally the case when enough merit has been given to them that they have moved on. With others, it takes a very long time, unfortunately.
That's interesting.
For the ghost involved. But sometimes amulets can become empty. It's maybe one in 20, 25 over a 10-year period will become empty because enough work has been done with them.
But I learned that there are now some amulets are being made without ghosts these days in the book. Why is that? That's a presumably different situation.
Police. Mm-hmm. And, the way things are. But Buddhism magic, which is magic without human materials, can be just as effective as pry, which is where they use human materials. But pry is like a V8. Yeah, Buddhism's maybe a bit of a moped, to be honest with you. But it all depends on who does it, and it depends on the situation involved and what you need the tool for. These are just tools. We can all get wrapped up with, there's a finger in that one, or, the hair of the Ajahn in that one. But they're still just a source of magic. They are just collections of things that the Ajahn has been able to direct in a way to help the person involved.
Mm.
I've got a couple of Buddhism amulets from a very famous monk, which I adore, but I've also got a ball of his flesh, his desiccated flesh in what's called a lukon. And I will wear one or the other depending on what the day is, where I'm going, what I need, and the ability to get the focus necessary to use these things eventually means you can split your mind up to be able to use them all day while doing other things, so they all kind of can work in a similar way. You've just got to tap into it and get enough focus together to be able to wield it.
Presumably you didn't take the ball of desiccated flesh through Heathrow?
Oh, I've worn it everywhere. I've been in St. Paul Cathedral wearing that one. Because it just looks like a brown ball.
Okay, good.
Scraping off his skull, the amulet I've got on at the moment, it's from the same wonderful monk, Lauren Poppy Nat. And, from the front, it's just a nice enamel panel with a picture of him. On the back, it's kind of green and brown because of the amount of flesh is stuck on the back, But people just see the front and think it's rather wonderful, or they see you as a devout Buddhist or whatever else, there's ways to all these things, and we can choose our own personal way, depending on what we want. I've chosen my way, and it hopefully will continue to develop. We've got to kind of go through the process of being able to understand ourselves at the same time.
Well, I think that's actually a really nice thought to end on, Jenx. So for people who want to know more or get in touch or have those Thai magic questions and so on, what do they do and where do they go?
Easiest one, well, there's 2 pages you can do it with. You can either do it through the Thai Occult books on Facebook, or you can send me a message through the ThaiOccult.com, which is my amulet site. There's a contact thing on there. And, just try and keep them vaguely sensible. Try not to be mad. I get some very strange emails, Gordon, as you can probably imagine.
Yes, I definitely
just keep it precise. To keep it precise, and it makes it easy for me to be able to answer, so concise and precise is the way to do it, and I'll take time to answer anybody who wants anything.
Wonderful.
And if anybody wants to know the foundation of this magic, buy the book. I'm happy with this one. This is the one.
It's an exceptional achievement. It was a pleasure to lift it up with my tiny arms and and read through it.
Well, if you don't like the book, you can do weightlifting with it.
Exactly.
Somebody dropped it on the face while reading, so she's now only reading it while sat at a table because it created a bruise.
Yeah.
It weighs 2 kilograms,
I usually try to read in bed at the end of a really long day, and I sort of pick this up, and I'm like, what the hell am I? Did Jenx publish the phone book? What's going on? So yes, I had to read it sitting up as well, like a normal human. But it was a joy. It was a joy to do so. Congratulations! It's fantastic.
Very kind of you. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much indeed. I'm not doing another one like this. It was really hard work, but I'm delighted with the results, and that people are happy and with the results, and it makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it?
That it does. Well, once again, thank you for writing the book and coming on to talk about it. And we've got your contact details. They'll be in the show notes, and should definitely let you get on with your Northern English day.
Thank you very much indeed, Gordon. Always a pleasure to chat, and thanks for the questions. Some of them were very interesting to me because I've not been asked them in that way before.
The thing about Jenx's books, and this latest one in particular, is they are shining examples of the shortcomings of book categorizations in general. It's not a practitioner's book, but I assure you it will have you diving into your magic supplies sufficiently inspired by example. It's not an academic anthropological book, though you could almost make the case that his several decades living in Thailand must constitute some kind of long-term participation and observation by living with field work. Sorry to describe your life like that, Jenx. And it's not memoir, except for all the parts that clearly are, as well as, I guess, the intellectual honesty that comes with creating a book based on his and Bon's experiences with Thailand and its spirits and its ajahns and so on. The first time Jenx came on the show, we spoke about how these books are part of the process of Thai magic announcing itself to a hypothetical United Nations of global magical systems, with the obvious multi-way invitation for what I would probably call cross-cultural worlding these days. Having read all of them, it really is fascinating to note the change in some of the answers given by the ajahns interviewed in the latest book. Part of that must presumably be down to the questions asked, but part of it feels to me like something else, which is that sort of upwelling of praxis and sharing of lifeways into a post-Standing Rock global conversation. Unrelated sidebar on Standing Rock, petition to date the beginning of Charles Fort's dominant of wider inclusions to the exact date of the protest. As a previous guest, Marcus Matafero-Lloyd, and I sort of discussed, he was there, I think we'll look back in 20 years' time and see it for the step change that it was. But those are my thoughts to do with the book and Thai magic and where we are in the timeline. So check out the show notes for more, check out Jenx's book, subscribe to the show wherever you damn like, and find me on Twitter where I am Gordon, Gordon_White, WHITE. Until next time.